Today we're gonna start with a 2018 Ford F-150 pickup, and we're gonna take the cab and all the running gear and put it into this Factory 5 Racing pre-runner chassis. It's gonna be pretty cool. Now, if you know anything about me by now, you know that I am a huge fan of building a vehicle, not buying a vehicle. But you're probably wondering, if that's the case, why am I driving around in this brand new Ford F-150? Maybe you think, oh, he's gonna do like a lift kit, wheels and tires and show us how to, redo your truck in the weekend. That's not what we're gonna do. Let's just paint a picture for you. Let's pretend you've got a 2015 and up Ford F-150, kind of like this one right here. Any model, doesn't matter as long as it's crew cab four-wheel drive. Let's pretend that you have that vehicle, but what you really want is a Ford Raptor. Well, what are you gonna do? Well, really, you only have one choice, and that one choice is to go ahead and, take your truck, trade it in, and buy a brand new Ford Raptor. But there's actually another option. Another option would be to create what's called a luxury pre-runner. Now, luxury pre-runners are incredibly expensive. They're essentially a trophy truck with all the bells and whistles inside that you'd find in a truck like this. Air conditioning, heat, heated steering wheel, heated seats, all that kind of stuff. But what we're gonna do today is we're gonna take this Ford F-150, and with some help from Factory 5 Racing, we are going to create our own version of a luxury pre-runner. We're gonna build a vehicle that can outperform a Raptor Pro R, can do everything essentially that a luxury pre-runner can do, maybe just a little bit under its abilities, but at the same time, we're gonna do all that for about a tenth of the cost. A luxury pre-runner is gonna start at $250, sometimes goes up to $500,000. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this F-150, we're not gonna include the price of the truck because we're gonna pretend you already have it, and for right around $30,000, $35,000, we're gonna build a vehicle that can handle some of the toughest off-road desert terrain you could imagine, and yet still run, drive, and handle like a brand new truck. So now that we have the truck in the shop, I actually have it positioned rather strategically, and that is because, as I said when we were driving it, the whole plan here is to show you guys that you can turn this F-150 into a vehicle that can eat a Raptor Pro R's lunch every day in the desert, and you can do it in your garage at home. So I'm not putting it on the lift. All my friends from Factory 5 Racing are gonna show up here in the shop. We're gonna tear this truck down the same way that you would tear it down in your garage at home, by me sitting on a stool watching them do all the work. It just needed some man hands. Okay, that bolt's out.
Nice. Gotta love aluminum.
We started taking the truck apart. I'm gonna stand here and talk to Nate about this whole package. So Nate, he's from Factory 5 Racing, in case you couldn't see the logo on his shirt. So Nate, let's talk a little bit, what are we saving off this truck?
So basically, you take the cab and all the running gear off the truck. We take that and we put it on our chassis. There's a few things we have to modify, a few things that we add, but obviously we give our own suspension, A-arms and uppers and lowers. But we take the brakes, the spindles, the full drivetrain, and the cab. So if you want a really nice truck, you get a Lariat or a Limited. If you want to just get in and just have a fun truck, cheap, just get yourself an XL or an XLT work truck.
Yeah, because I was looking online last night. You can get one of these trucks for like 15 grand.
Oh, yeah, the sky's the limit, too. You can have this one. This one we went with a really nice interior. This is more of a show truck, and it's going to be given away to a charity. So we went with a nicer truck, but we have one back there. We have a 2015 back in Massachusetts. It's just cloth interior.
Super cheap.
Super cheap, super fun.
So we're going to keep the cab. We're not going to strip the cab. We leave everything inside.
Leave the cab just the way it is, pick it up, and pop it onto our chassis.
And you have a super secret way to do this without a lift, right?
I do. A lot of people said, how are we going to do this in our own backyard or garage? Well, we're going to show you here. We would love to use the lift, hell of a lot easier, but this time we'll do it the way we know how to do it without the lift, so we'll show everybody how it's done.
Problem solved. All right, well, as soon as I get the front end done, we can roll the frame out, right?
Correct. Almost
easy.
there.
It's so easy. All right, let's go back to work. Well, that didn't sound good at all. All right, Jim, so we've been watching the back of the truck, and now we're at the front of the truck. So obviously there's a lot of stuff taken off of here. What are we after on the front of the truck?
Right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna roll the whole chassis out from under the cab, but we're gonna leave the drivetrain in it. So we had to get anything off the front that would have been in the way. That whole radiator support we just took off with the radiator. Basically all the fenders, the inner fenders, the whole front grille. So now this thing has the room to just roll on out from underneath.
So like if someone's doing this garage, that's why we put it in backwards. You just open the garage door, roll it outside until you need it.
Exactly, we'll leave the front wheels on, we put casters in the back and just roll it out from under, and then you don't have to use a lift or anything, you know, that you wouldn't have.
You know, we do this all the time with Jeeps, is the nice thing about a modern truck is it's designed to come apart. You're not cutting things, you just have to unhook stuff.
Right, that's how the factory makes it so they can work on it.
Yeah, so this cab, like as a matter of fact, if someone's gonna work on that motor, they may have to take this cab off.
Right.
Yeah, so the nice thing is all you gotta do is find everything to unhook everything, separate, leave the motor with the chassis, and then just everything that stays with the body stays with the body. But you reuse all the stuff, right? You're gonna reuse the ABS pump and everything in the front of this truck.
Almost everything, all the electronics, even that whole radiator support will still bolt back on once this is on top of the new chassis.
All right, so I guess we're ready here, right?
We're ready to go.
We just gotta wait for them to get the back end.
Once they get the rear end out, we can roll it out.
Slackers! Come on, I'll show you where my stool is.
Clear this engine hoist.
My turn?
Yeah, okay here.
Bring her all the way out. Let's bring her all the way out now. Here we go. So this is what makes the truck really cool, right?
Right, this is what separates it from all the other trucks on the road.
So this is not like we obviously took the old frame out from underneath the cab and we're replacing it with all of this. Let's talk through this. What are we sitting in?
So basically this chassis, you roll the old one out, we're gonna slide this one under the cab, set it down on here. And what this is doing is it's designed to take all the long travel suspension. So instead of like doing it one end at a time, back halving the truck, that kind of thing, you just replace the chassis, then the four-link bolts back in the rear, all those long control arms and everything bolts up in the front, the long travel shocks bolts up. So basically it's making the entire truck a bolt together.
And this is not, like there's no fab in this, right? Like stock body mounts go in the stock, these holes and everything. So no one's gonna have to like weld anything. This is just bolt together. Right?
Exactly. This is designed to bolt all of either the factory stuff in place or the suspension parts that we provide.
And front diffs going back in.
Front diff.
Engine transmission, cab,
Right. Yep.
everything. And then we're reusing the rear end.
Yep, drive shafts we reuse. We give longer CVs in the front because of the extra width and some steering rack extenders. But pretty much all the rest of the stuff is just OEM driveline.
Now, some people would question why it's made out of this square material, but it's the reality is, most factory frames are not round, they're square. But this is all trussed and bridged and super strong, right?
Right, you know, because it's a truck and you have this long area that's flat, that's where you need all the strength and that bending strength under the chassis, and that's where these big rectangle tubes are strong.
Because people might not know this, but Raptors actually bend in half on the regular basis.
Right, that's why we have all this extra truss and all this extra bracing down here.
Yeah, so this is like almost like two frames. I have an upper frame and then the lower frame, and it's all trussed in, and then even the back. And we're not reusing the bed, right? It's all new.
Correct. Well, basically that whole substructure will get skinned, and then that's the bed, and then the fenders just hang on that.
What we'll do next is we'll slide this over, drop the cab on it, and it'll be a truck again.
Push the side in a little, Mark. So they come towards you more, right?
We're back in the shop working on our Factory 5 Racing XTF. I said that right?
Yes, XTF.
Colby's here with the part of the build team. Right now, where are we at? We got the body on the new chassis. What's next?
Next, we're going to be putting in the front drivetrain, differential, rack, getting ready to put the motor in. But first, we have to prep the motor for the supercharger.
Spinny air compressor, power adder thingy.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna move this chassis over onto the lift, but you don't need to have a lift to do this. You could just jack this up and put on jack stands.
Do it on jack stands.
Yeah, but since the spot in the shop we need to put it is where the lift is, so it's going to go over on the lift, then we'll put it up in the air, and then we're basically going to start with the front suspension, so we'll move the front suspension over onto this. How much wheel travel do we get in this bad boy?
About 16 in the front.
16 inches of wheel travel up front. That makes it a legit pre-runner in my business. I'm calling right now, pre-runner. All right, so let's move this over there, and move the thing that's out there back in here, and we'll do stuff. All right, so now we're talking with my good friend Owen from Factor 5 Racing. We're talking about suspension. So this is, obviously it's pre-runner truck, so we increase the width of the vehicle to get more wheel travel. How much wider are we?
So we're at 10 inches over stock, which is significantly wider. We have wider or longer CV axles to account for that. And then, you know, all the body work to go with it.
And then obviously new upper, new lower control arm.
Yep.
But the shocks, like every true off-road truck, this is where the magic happens.
That's right.
And this is just not an off-the-shelf Fox. This is built for you by Fox, correct?
Right, so we had a team that went out to Fox, their proving grounds, and they tested and tuned with them. So we have picked out and tuned with them a correct spring rate for this. We got the remote reservoir set up, and we're at about 16 inches of travel in the front.
And so they've got the valving spec for this truck. Now we're putting this truck together, just the single shock coilover, but obviously you've got all the tabs. If you wanted to add bypasses, you can do that later on.
Yep, they're there. We have tabs for sway bars if you want that as well, and it all just bolts in.
There we go. Bolt in, long travel suspension. Easy peasy.
That's right.
I'll make him do it. You do that, Owen. I'll be over here.
Deal.
Sit on my stool. So motor, basically the entire drivetrain's out of this thing now, right, Jesper?
Yep.
So motor's out now. You're sitting in your garage, two-car garage. You're at this point. What do you take off this original frame?
So now we're going to take all the hard brake lines, the front diff, the steering rack, and the fuel system, the fuel tank, you know.
And
so.
all of that is just going to go over to the new frame.
Yep, bolt right on.
So we don't have to build custom brake lines or steering lines or anything. It's all ready to rock. This whatever comes off this truck goes onto that truck.
Yep.
We're going to take the front diff out. Drive shafts?
Yep.
So they reuse all the drive shafts.
Yes.
This is great. So once we get that stripped off, and this frame's basically, well, for us it's garbage,
Scrap
but
metal, yeah.
somebody could sell it for something
Sure,
and get a little recoup money. All right, so diff out, steering rack out, but none of this all is none of this.
We don't use that at all. It's junk.
All right, so that stays. These two parts come out, fuel tank out, hard lines.
Good
This
to
is
go.
Awesome. Awesome. Electric power steering. So now we're on to the point of the rear suspension, but we're reusing the rear axle out of the donor truck.
Yes.
And there's a couple different versions of this axle, right?
Yep. 8.8. This is a Super 8.8, and they also have a 9.75.
And you have a bracket kit for both of those.
Both of those.
But we're not leaving this truck leaf sprung.
No.
So what are we doing to the back of this?
It's going to be a triangulated 4-link.
So triangulated 4-link with trailing arms, right?
Trailing arms.
I like that. I'm a big fan of trailing arms. All right, so triangular, but we don't have to weld anything onto this axle
No.
because you have a whole brackety kit thing, right?
Brackety kit. It all bolts together.
So how does this going to bolt together?
The axle brace bolts through the diff cover, bolts onto the spring pads, and then we have another bracket that clamps to the bottom of the axle, and actually our rear lower control arms bolt through the bracket that clamps onto the bottom of the
So
axle.
it's basically all hooked up together when it's all said
Yes.
and done, and no welding required. But we do have to cut off these.
You do have to cut off the
shock
shock mounts.
Okay, so, and then once we get to that point, we can just sling it underneath the truck.
Yes.
All right, so I'll cut those mounts off.
Okay.
You get that stuff ready, and then we'll do all those things.
All right. Sounds good.
I love cutting stuff. Welcome back to the shop where we are currently building a Factory 5 Racing XTF, right?
Correct. Yep.
Extreme Truck Ford, right? I knew it. I got it
There
right.
you go.
Finally. All right, so the whole Factory 5 team is here with me, and Owen is right now. We're going to talk about the benefits of this truck because one of the things is it's still at its heart, a lot of parts are just F-150 parts, right?
Right. Yep.
So we got the shocks underneath there, but there's still just a bunch of stock stuff, right?
Right. Like the whole powertrain is stock. You know, brakes you can use as stock, or we can upgrade them like we're doing here.
That's right. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to upgrade brakes all the way around. We have Power Stop Z36 truck and tow package. So the beauty of the Z36 is we have the heavy-duty rotors that are drilled and slotted to help with the off-gassing of the pads as well as cleaning the pads. The pads are specifically designed for heavy-duty applications like a full-size truck. If you're actually towing, or in the case of this, it's a high-performance vehicle.
Right.
So we want that extra ability to stop. And the compound of the pads is designed to bed in better on the rotors. And it's just one of the nice things, right? So we basically have stock brakes on that truck, but we're gonna be able to upgrade them with just bolt-on pieces to make this truck even better. Owen has the old pads and rotors off the truck and can now start swapping in the new rubber boots that Power Stop also includes in the kit for your sliders. Then he'll install the new pads in the bracket and slide on the new rotor, and the brake upgrade is done. We can then turn our attention to the rear of the truck, and this includes a brand new bracket and axle brace that bolts on through the diff cover to give us spots to hook up our new rear suspension without having to do any welding on our factory Ford axle. We're at the back of the truck now, and Jim has just finished putting in the fuel tank, and this is one thing that I thought was super cool because the fuel tank is now way back here.
That's right. We basically, instead of having the fuel tank run under the cab, we move it all the way to the back, which does two things. It gets basically the weight back here as much as we can get it, and it gets out of the way of the four-link.
But by doing that, now obviously everything else we've used in this truck, we had pull from the frame. So we had stock brake lines and that kind of stuff. But what do you do about fuel lines and the electronics?
So we give extensions for both those things. We give pre-wired wiring harnesses for the fuel pump and the level, and then we give some hose basically to just extend the fuel lines and the charcoal canister lines.
And then where does it fill up now?
It will fill up in the fender, but instead of in front of the wheel, it's right behind the wheel.
Right behind the wheel.
Yep.
Awesome. This is super cool. I like this. And you have to use a specific tank though, right?
That's right. The extended cabs will come with two different tanks. The optional, the long-range one, is actually too wide. It won't fit across this way, so this is the standard tank for the F-150. It's 26 gallons.
So 26 gallons,
Yep.
but still uses the actual tank straps that we took out of
Factory
the
straps, yeah, they basically just hook up into the brackets we give, and you just pull it up in here.
And the cool thing about it is, you know, it's still just like regular old Ford parts. Something happens to that fuel pump, you're not buying a special fuel pump.
Right, you're not messing with the emissions at all. It's all that stuff is just still right the way they left it.
Awesome. So now we're ready to put a rear end under this truck. It fits like a glove. With the trailing arms installed on the back of the truck and our shock in its mount, we're pretty much ready to get a rear axle underneath this truck and build a rolling chassis. We're back in the shop, wrapping up essentially the rolling chassis portion of our Factory 5 Racing XTF pre-runner style pickup truck. Now, the rear axle has been fully prepped by Colby. We got the brace installed for our triangulated four-link in the back. But before we put it underneath there, we're gonna go ahead and throw one more upgrade of that, and that is a set of Crown brake lines. Now, you know, for me, I love running Crown brake lines on all of my vehicles, mainly because of the strength. You end up with the multi-layered design of the actual brake line itself. That makes it incredibly safe, prevents it from any swelling when you put that brake pressure into the line, and then the one-piece fittings makes it incredibly strong. This removes any of those leak points that can come up in a brake system. Now, we were able to simply spec a set of F-150 lines for this rear axle, and I had them do it in this dark black smoke, because it's kind of gonna go with the theme of the truck, and it'll simply replace the factory rubber flex lines that go from the axle up to the frame. When taking off the old brake lines, I like to use a line wrench to make sure that I don't round off any of the tube nuts. These Crown Performance brake lines are also Kevlar reinforced, and as I've said before, they are some of my favorite brake lines on the market, and they come in multiple colors to match any application that you want. With the brake lines done, we can install the final brackets we need for the 4-link setup in the rear, and then roll the rear axle in place and hook it all up. So we started the show off today by driving this truck around the neighborhood, and now it's sitting on this Factory 5 Racing XTF chassis. That's a lot of work in a short period of time, Nate.
It is, but we got a good crew here.
All the Factory 5 build crew montage guys did all the work. I just hung out on my stool and watched. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
So this truck, obviously we're not done. We're still got to put the drivetrain and everything back in it. But this truck is for something kind of special, isn't it?
It is. We actually have been working with Joey Logano for a couple of years. We've done some fun projects with him. We built this nasty drift truck with him, one of our other car models. And then we've just kept in touch, and we decided that we wanted to donate this truck to the Joey Logano Foundation. So it goes to like underprivileged kids. That's why we're going to do some fun stuff with it. You don't need a supercharger for the truck, but we decided to throw an Edelbrock on it. You know, if you're going to give something to Joey Logano, you probably got to...
He likes the horsepowers.
I would say so, yeah. I think you're not going to be impressed with a stock Coyote, even though it's plenty of engine for the truck.
All right. The next step for this is obviously drivetrain in, and then we got to get put on all the cool body panels, right?
Yep. Well,
and that's part of the kit, right? That's
part of the kit. Yep. We're putting on the optional carbon fiber panels.
Yep.
But mostly everybody's going for that. No paint. Yeah. It's no paint, no body work. So.
All right. So next time you see this truck, it'll be a truck again, just like that. That's when it turns into a truck.
Boom.
But it didn't do it.